The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he's working or playing, because to him, he's always doing both. These are prophetic words from James Michener, and I think they perfectly describe Father George L. Livonas, proto-presbyter of the Ecumenical Throne and proestamenos of All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Canonsburg, PA, as well as the chief visionary behind the soulfoodforlife.com website. Now, an equally accurate description of Father George can be found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 14 through 60, where we hear, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people hide a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and give it light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Proskame, pay attention. Today, you'll hear from someone sharing some things you must hear, and he'll teach you some things that nobody else can or will. He'll say some things that nobody else has the courage or calling to tell you. You'll learn many essential things that you should consider before you live another day of your life. If you listen and watch this compelling three-part good and faithful servant through living your stewardship calling testimonial until the end, you'll cry, you'll be in awe, you'll laugh out loud, and you'll learn to overcome fear. You'll find peace and you'll smile with joy. And perhaps most importantly, you will see yourself and your life with greater clarity, and you'll learn some things that can help you live a better life. Indeed, the time you spend with Father George and his presbytera can truly be life-changing if you'll just block out all of the distracting noises of your life and pay attention. I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. Please listen to the entire Good and Faithful Servant through Living Your Stewardship Calling, three-part programs to the very end, and judge for yourself. We're going to present Father George and Presbytera Dianthy's journey in three parts. Part one is the journey through life in search of calling. Part two is the moment after, the clarity of vision from the partner's perspective. And part three is the journey through death to the resurrection. Today, we actually begin at the end. In science, we kind of call that reverse engineering. You look at what you can at the end and then figure out how you'll get there by kind of working backwards. But after you do that, you can turn around and face forward with the clarity and certainty that you're headed in the right direction. You'll be able to make more progress in your life by listening today to two holy people who are now facing backwards and willing to share with you the honest secrets of what they see at the end of the life so that you can move forward with greater confidence. And at the end of anything, when you look back, you do so with kind of an unbiased and dispassionate perspective. You'll see everything behind you with the unique clarity and the perfection of 2020 vision. For an all too rare moment, time seems to stand still, and you have the space and wisdom to see what you did and said, or what you didn't do or didn't say. In part two of this program, you'll hear Presbytera Dianthy Livonas talk about the moment after. Yes, the moment after. That critical time right after something is behind you, where there's nothing but the silence and reality of what just happened. This is where true wisdom remains in hiding for you to discover. This is not the excited anticipation of some unknown future. No, instead, you see the unvarnished, fully played out past with a clarity and simplicity that perhaps eluded you while you were in the moment of living. The moment after is perhaps the moment of greatest insight. We'll explore the moment after as we help you search for clarity of how to live the rest of your life from two people who are contemplating death. This is an amazing gift from Father George and Presbytera Dianthy Livonas. And my brothers and sisters, if you will take the time to watch and listen and actually pay attention as you prayerfully reflect on your remaining time on this globe, you'll receive a gift from this most blessed couple that no one else can give you. Hello, brothers and sisters, and welcome to a special three-part series of Stewardship Calling on Ancient Faith Radio. This is Bill Marianis from stewardshipcalling.com on the shores of beautiful Lake Lanier in Gainesville, Georgia, just north of Atlanta. And I have a simple premise that is perfectly exemplified by Father George in Presbytera. It's that you have a calling, a personal calling, a reason to your life and a reason for your life, something which you need to do with all of the gifts that God has given you as a steward. It's what I call your stewardship calling. And this message comes so clearly from St. Paul in his letter to the Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, when he says that he begs you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you've been called. And after almost 40 years as a partner in two global mega law firms, I discovered that my why, my personal calling, is to be a stewardship calling evangelist. I'm here to help people and parishes discover and live their stewardship callings so that they may have a good account before the awesome judgment seat of Christ, as we follow Christ's great commandment to love one another and his great commission to make disciples of all nations and his great charge to serve one another. Welcome to that journey. Now, everything that I have to offer can be found at my always free website, stewardshipcalling.com, and you can always reach me at bill@stewardshipcalling.com. All of this program will be available to you on the Ancient Faith Radio website under the Stewardship Calling program, or by going to stewardshipcalling.com under Ancient Faith Radio. Now, to try and prepare myself to confront death in this three-part in-depth program, I started researching death in depth on my 66th birthday. Now, some might find that odd to spend a full day researching death on one's birthday, but that Friday wasn't a typical Friday birthday. It was actually Good Friday in the Orthodox Christian tradition. And what better time to really think about the lessons of death than on the day that we commemorate the passing through death of the most important figure in all of history, our Lord, our Savior, our true north, Jesus Christ. I pushed my good friend, Father George Livonas, and his incredible life mate, Presbytera Dianthi, to record their wisdom before we celebrated his Timothy 2:4-7 moment. We all aspire for a Timothy 2:4-7 moment at the end of our lives, but not all of us will attain it. At the end, as we finish our short visit on this planet and prepare for an eternal celestial journey, there's one thing we should all aspire to say, and I quote, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." These are the exact words from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. But did you hear it? Did you listen? This is actually available to all of us. This is what a Timothy 2:4-7 moment means. At the end of our lives, we can say the words and really mean them, that we fought the good fight, finished the race, and kept the faith. That's essentially my definition for a life well lived. In three parts, you'll hear all about such a life well lived, full of tragedy and pain and heartache and sorrow and disappointments. But all of that paled by comparison to the unbelievable faith and highs and joys and accomplishments. So please don't get so lost in the captivating stories and tears from Father George and Presbytera that you miss the two key themes that will run through all three parts. And spoiler alert, as it turns out, the key to a life well lived is simply all about saying yes to Christ and sharing love. And really, that isn't two things, it's just one thing, because Christ is love. So you can't be a follower of Jesus Christ, and I mean a real disciple of Jesus Christ, unless everyone would say about you that you are a purveyor of love. And in these three-part programs, you're going to hear from a super spreader of love in search of Jesus Christ. Lux Narayan heads Unimetric, a social media intelligence company that helps people harness social signals to track and analyze data. One day, for kicks and giggles, Lux started a research project of carefully scrutinizing 2,000 obituaries in the New York Times. Talk about an interesting or morbid task, depending on your perspective. But this was important research. The empirical findings were very enlightening. And if you get a chance, you should watch his TED Talk, and I'll link it on my website. But I want to share with you the two big discoveries that he made. Number one, the average age at which people who died achieved their first significant thing that's cited in their obituary was 37 years old. So on average, you have to wait 37 years until your first significant achievement before you die, on average, 44 years later at the age of 81. Let that soak in for a second if you haven't started to live your stewardship calling. But more fascinating to me was when they fully digested the first paragraph of all 2,000 obituaries. And they did it separately for two groups, famous people and people who were not famous. And then they did a heat mapping word cloud to see what word most commonly used to describe the famous and the word that was most commonly used to describe those that were not famous. Fascinatingly, regardless of whether or not the deceased person was famous or not, the most commonly used word for both of these groups was help. Yeah, you heard me right. Help. The overwhelming majority of people had helped someone else. That's it. They helped some person or some institution that helped people. This led the researchers to conclude that in the end, a life worth remembering in death is lived by making a difference through helping others. They ended their information by saying, and I quote, "If more people lived their lives trying to be famous in death, the world would be a much better place," end quote. Because the path of fame is actually the path of service in helping others. So as it turns out, Christ gave us the right recipe in Luke 10:37. At the end of the parable of the Good Samaritan, where our Lord instructed us to go and do likewise and help someone else. In this program, you're going to see those instructions fully lived out. So let's begin with part one, the journey through life in search of calling, with our tour guide and host, Father George Livonas. For those who may not know him, Father George was actually born in the rough and tumble side of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he graduated from Abraham Lincoln High School in 1980. He received his Bachelor of Arts from the Hellenic College in 1984 and his Master of Divinity from Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology in 1987. And boy, does he have some stories to tell about those days. He served as the assistant priest at St. Constantine and Helen Cathedral in Maryville, Indiana, from June 1st, 1987 through August of 1988. And then he was transferred to be the proestamino at St. John the Divine Greek Orthodox Church in Wheeling, West Virginia, from September 1988 until July of 1989, when Bishop Maximus of blessed memory called him to serve as proestamino of All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, where he has served, and I really mean served, since July of 1989. Well, at Hellenic College Holy Cross, he married the love of his life, Dianthe Papoudas Livonas, and they have been married for over 36 years. Together, they have raised 7 children and are enjoying the fruits of that labor with many grandchildren. Round about their table, which is a true miracle in life, because of an illness Father George experienced in his 20s that might have made it impossible for him to have children. And he's going to share that story with us. In 2020, Father George's 31st year at All Saints, 2 remarkable things happened. The first was the COVID pandemic, which closed the churches for a time. The second was his terminal diagnosis with mesothelioma. When both of those conspired to keep him from preaching each week in person, he began creating video messages for his flock, which he calls Soul Food for Life. And you can find them at the soulfoodforlife.com website. Please check out this amazing website. Now, I think Father George has something like 7.2 million friends and followers on social media. And while that number may be a little bit of an exaggeration, none of us know the full extent of the reach of his powerful message and his effervescent presence. And after you listen to this 3-part program, you will know why. So let's begin the Good and Faithful Servant Through Living Your Stewardship Calling program with part 1, the journey through life in search of calling, with Father George Livonas, Proto-Presbyter of the Ecumenical Throne.
Well, Father George, thank you so much. But I just provided your official bio, but we know there's always a whole lot more to our stories than what is in our bios. And you know, for example, I noticed that you were an assistant priest at Saints Constantine and Helen in Maryville, Indiana, which coincidentally was where my wife and I got married 6 years before you got there. So you weren't there for that one. But what I wanted to do is give you an opportunity to share with everyone a little bit more about your beginnings, your early days, maybe some of the Father George pieces we don't all know.
Okay, well, as they say, you asked for it.
I didn't.
As I was, I was born and raised in Northeast Philadelphia to two wonderful gifts that God gave me: a mother and a father. Only child. My parents both were born on the island of Chios, so I find that a tremendous honor. For those who know church history and ecclesiastical history, Chios plays a tremendous part in the Byzantine Empire, known as the second Ionoros for the amount of saints that have come from it, and at the same time, from the gift that God has given it, the only place in the world where the mastic tree produces the sap. So being born and raised in Philly kind of gave me a certain attitude. If you know anything about Philadelphians, right? Famous for throwing snowballs at Santa Claus and booing your own team before the game starts, etc. I grew up in a very ethnic neighborhood, multi-ethnic neighborhood. Few Greeks specifically around us, but really it was mostly a lot of Italians, a lot of Irish, a lot of Germans. And my dad and mom had a restaurant. We lived above it. My dad leaves early in the morning, goes downstairs, is in the restaurant. I only get to see him when I go into the restaurant or when he comes upstairs. When I go into the restaurant or when he comes upstairs at night. So, very small apartment, really small apartment. So I'm honored to tell you that I actually was inducted 25 years ago in the Balloon Basketball Hall of Fame. So what's the Balloon Basketball Hall of Fame?
Wait. Balloon Basketball Hall of Fame? What the heck is that?
Okay. So basically when you're an only child living in a micro small apartment and your parents have in the living room a tall standing lamp with a nice head bulb on it that's open at the top, you get a balloon, you blow it up, and now you're bouncing it like this in your hands, and you're trying to shoot it into the lamp, which of course is much higher than I am. I'm not my height now. And so I got to be a professional because there's really, the only thing I could do was do that or watch the Three Stooges TV, and things of that nature. And had to wait Saturday for my true love to come on TV, which was professional wrestling first and then roller derby.
Oh, now, I remember those days.
I'm dating myself, but you gotta know.
I'm with you, brother. I remember those days. The Bruiser, the Crusher. I mean, yeah. The San Francisco Bay Area Bombers. I mean, come on.
Anyway, when you have professional wrestling and roller derby on the same day, that energy lasts you a whole week.
Yeah.
And then you go into the neighborhood, right? And so there are really no yards per se. The street was where we played tackle football, street hockey, wiffle ball, pinball, you just name it, right? And so what did everybody do? We hung around on the street corner. And though I was known as the good Greek boy, quote, quote, I hung around a lot of people who were affected by drugs, alcohol, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And was able to keep myself clean in that sense. But I learned a lot about interacting with a whole variety of people. And when I was really young, I was really influenced a lot by that plethora of diversity in community. Now, everybody knew your name. Yep. So everyone knew there's little Georgie, Leon and Marika's son, and I would waddle down the street.
They knew your mother and father, so that if you got in trouble, they knew about it before you got home.
And boy, did I get in trouble.
No, come on, man. Angelic,
Bill, there were two. I won't say two different personas. The core was respectfully the good kid.
Yeah.
But the outside had to deal with being in the world.
Yeah, the inner city of
says
Philly.
You are in the world, but not of the world.
Right.
So I had to be able to make it in that tough environment and neighborhood. So there were a lot of times that our apartment doorbell would ring, and my mom would have to walk down 16 stairs and open the door, and there was Mrs. So-and-so saying, Mrs. Livonas, your son Georgie beat my son with a hockey stick. And he's bleeding and crying. I mean, Georgie's a good boy, but please tell your son, And so, of course, my mom would go, ee. And then she would walk up the 16 stairs. Wait,
let me guess. She would pick up the kutala, the wooden spoon, and show you how to wield it, right?
Let me tell you something. Everything the Radio Shack sold that could fly was invented by a Greek mom. Because I had such a little running space that I could try to run away from her. And so if she couldn't catch me, she was the pandofla. I mean, I was the pandofla, to be quite honest.
The slippers. Yeah, they could whip those slippers off and whip them at you like, boomerangs. Turns
the corner, right?
Right.
Sometimes I think I missed, but I forget that there was a second one. Right.
Yeah.
And then when I was really smart, when it happened in the mid-afternoon and my dad was napping, it really was like a Three Stooges scene where I would run this little hallway and knock on his bedroom door and then run into my room, then run around to the living room, run through the little hallway, knock on his door, run around. She's chasing me. So he finally would get up like 2:30, 3 o'clock. Tia, my mom, I'm going to kill him. Right? And so
my mother's going to kill me.
So he takes her into the bedroom, closes the door, and I'm sitting there in a puddle of tears going, hoping that I would make it. Of course, my dad would come out and looked at me and says, if I ever had a chance, I'd hit you once, I would melt you. Now that sounds violent, right? That sounds violent.
Right.
But really what he was saying is, you're my only child. You're my son. I love you.
Yeah.
Like that was the message. But it came out.
Yeah.
That's escortoso. I'm going to kill you.
Right. I'm going to. Yeah.
That's why Vasily the comedian is so popular because, Fasefao, I'm going to eat you.
Right.
But it really means I'm going to hold you in my bosom and show you.
Yeah, tafasksilo, you're going to eat wood. I mean, these don't make sense, but when we were growing up, they did make sense, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. So survival in the city was mandatory. Northeast wasn't downtown, but it does, or Center City, Philly, but still the city. I'm in the city. I live in the city. So there's a lot of necessity for survival, which probably leads you maybe to your next thought. So, like, what were your tools of surviving?
Yeah. No, that is it. I mean, those are incredible life lessons, aren't they?
Oh, they are. For as much pain, sorrow, and suffering, loneliness, fear, anxiety that that little chubby Greek boy kept inside, I'm so thankful because it helped me become the man I am today.
Yeah.
During this really tough time.
Right.
During this really tough time. Back then, the only way I was able to express myself, we were all watching professional wrestling, TV wrestling. And it was only once a week, one show. And, sometimes it was two shows, a morning and an afternoon. And, you would think it, like a good Protestant, it was the Sunday service, because we would run to the TV.
Yeah, it's a little religion.
we would run to the TV and just sit there. And, it was out of Allentown, PA, and farmhouse in Harrisburg. And no one ever told us it was staged or fake. So, being
here we go.
The very, what's the word? The very imaginative, creative,
creative
type of person, type of person that I was as a child, and this is like from 6-ish on. I had to deal with something. I got the metal milk carton, the metal milk carton or the folded wooden chair, and every week we would settle the name callings, fat Greek, this, that, and the other thing with chairs and with milk cartons, and inevitably, ding dong.
Yeah.
My mom's doorbell would ring. Yeah, and I came home with scratches, and I was smart. I got home before the parents got to my house, so I got a chance to say, my mom was like, "Dude, what do you have? Ronnie, hit me," it's kind of pulling, what's the Greek song? Oh, Yorgos είναι πονηρός. George is wily, right?
Right. Crafty,
crafty, right? So, there was authenticity to my tears and my pain, but there was a way of kind of getting on mom's side before the neighbors would come and complain.
You're pleading your case before the mother on the other side. Now, let me ask you this. I didn't mean to digress here and interrupt your great story, but I know this is true. You may not want to share it with people. Okay. What was your wrestling name in the neighborhood? We all had a name. We all had one. What was yours? Do you remember?
It's not that do I remember?
Yeah.
I have kept that quiet.
Okay.
For 30 some years. Animal.
There it is.
George the Animal Livonas.
There he is. I love it. What a great, and anybody who knows you now knows the big hulking figure you present, but you are the reverse of that. You have become this enormous, lovable teddy bear character. So it's still kind of an animal of sort, but it's a very different kind of animal than I think you were trying to project when you were in the hood with the brothers and the sisters and the kids and the friends.
It was Jimmy the Greek.
Yeah.
Animal. But that animal was like the top one.
All right. I love it. So this experience growing up in this true melting pot, rough and tumble, blessed, everything all mixed up in one, gave you a sense of perspective of diversity that you can't get in the school, right? I mean, you really saw it all. And I suspect you worked in your father's restaurant at some point, right?
Well, see, Dad died before my 12th. Dad died just before my 12th birthday. And in wonderful, typical Greek fashion, right? I'm out playing in the neighborhood, and we lived above the restaurant. So above the back of the kitchen was our porch, so it's second floor. And my mom, whenever she wanted to call me, remember now, there's no cell phones. Texting, right?
You don't need a cell phone when you got that voice in the backyard, right?
She would get out there, and I wish you could see what I could see. I could probably find pictures. Yorgo! That voice went through at least 4 blocks of homes, basements, and I could hear it.
Yeah, better than Luciano Pavarotti, huh? I mean, she could just bellow it out there.
So I came home, and I walked up the steps, but I noticed that the restaurant had a sign up, and I didn't read it. So the front, our door was right to the right of the entrance of the restaurant. So I went in, and we didn't have many relatives. My mom's family was all in Greece, primarily Thessaloniki. My nono and nona, my father's brother and of blessed memory, and his wife, and some first cousins from Dad's side. Like the small living room was packed. People were standing. And in the kitchen, there were like 3 or 4 people. And so I didn't know any better. I came in, I'm all sweaty. Hey, guys, Thea, how are you, Thea? You know, hey, hi. And they're like, and I'm like, you know, I'm smiling. And, you know, I go in the kitchen and I happen to look down at the kitchen table. And I see restaurant closed for death. And nothing clicked. And so within about half an hour, everybody left. And my 25 years older first cousin was the last one out. And he's halfway down the stairs. He stops, he turns around, and he looks up the steps. And I'm standing next to Mom. And he said, George, your dad died. And, you know, I didn't flinch. I'll give you the backstory in a moment. I didn't flinch. And my mom remembers this like it was yesterday. She said, I just turned and looked at her. I said, Mr. Horias, Mama, don't worry, Mom. We're going to make it.
Wow.
That was the 27th. No, 20, so, oh Lord. I think it's 27th of June, I think it was, 1974. In the beginning of June, 16 days prior, 12:30 at night, my mom wakes me up and says, we have to take your dad to the hospital. And so I kind of, you know, rubbed my eyes, got out of my bed, just turned the corner into their bedroom. And I see forgive me for the graphic, I was 11 and a half, a pool of blood. My dad lying on his side, green as can be, in a lot of pain, moaning. And so my mom, you know, opened the door. They brought the stretcher. They put him in the stretcher. She didn't know how to drive.
Right.
So she went with them to the hospital, and a neighbor took me, one of the business neighbors took me to their home that night. That was the last time, forgive me, that was the last time I saw my father. He really wasn't vocal because of his health. And for whatever he was able to tell my mom, he didn't want me to see him in that situation.
Yeah.
He wanted me to remember him, how he was. Something that you'll forgive the language, I swear to you, don't anyone ever do to their kids and loved ones. Let them, and I know we'll develop this a little later, but let them experience every aspect of this journey, because it's life and it's raw and it's right.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know when I was sleeping during those 16 days that many times my mom left me all alone in the apartment above the restaurant and took a cab and went to the hospital to be with my dad, and came in just before I woke up to walk myself 8 blocks to grade school. You know, life really changed when he passed away. It was just really, it was just her and I. And I got to really experience life in a really different sense, because everyone became my Theo and Thea.
Right.
And I, within the Greek community, then really hung around adults, like, you know, for 24/7 for any socialization. Yeah, I still had the neighborhood
everyone's
stuff.
Your aunt and your uncle at that point. It didn't matter whether they were family or not family. They were your aunt and your uncle, weren't they?
Right. Yeah. So I remember very well having to sit on, you know, if we wanted some kind of parea, we go to Thea's so-and-so's house. And, you know, here's a, woman in her 60s or 70s with my mom drinking coffee and tea. And there I am sitting there on the couch like this, you know, But it was okay because otherwise we'd just be sitting in our apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But wow, I think back now, I have nothing but thank you to say to God. Nothing but thank you.
Well, in some sense, I can only imagine that as close as your mom was, notwithstanding your earlier stories about her chasing you around with her pantofla, her slippers and whatnot, I know how much closeness that breeds. But I suspect that in this moment, in this context, as you looked up to her, as you said you did, and said, we're going to be all right, there was another dimension of bond and relationship that you probably felt in a really palpable way.
With her?
Yeah.
She became my best friend.
Yeah.
You know, that woman became father, mother, brother, sister, everything.
Yeah.
She'd take me to the park and we'd throw balls together and kickball and footballs. And you know, she would always say, you know, when my husband died, I had to be a father to him. So she even took me to the Philadelphia Spectrum.
What?
With the the trains.
Yeah.
And we would go to professional wrestling matches.
Now that must have been the sight to behold. This Greek woman really bringing in her son to a wrestling match. I'm sure that there were more than a few tongues that wagged at that 13,
sight. Huh? 14, 15. Yeah, it's not an exaggeration. You know, we went to the Spectrum and there we were. You know, because Greek was our mother tongue.
Right.
And we would say it in Greek. Hit him. You know, do this, do that. You know, and then she would come home shaking. You know, because you got 13, 14, 18,000 people screaming.
Right.
Screaming.
Right.
I mean, it's like the gladiator, closed stadium, gladiators.
Right.
So she said, you know, that she went, for her, it was like, you know, she could have, listen, when my dad died, she tried to keep the restaurant open by herself. Couldn't do it. I don't blame her.
Yeah,
so she sold the business, kept the building. She could have easily, and she said this, I could have left with my son, gone to Greece. My parents were alive. She had 2 sisters, a brother. I had 2 cousins there from her side of the family, in Thessaloniki. And life would have been a lot better for her.
Yeah.
Personally, life would have been a lot better for her. But she said, I won't do it because it'll be better for him to be raised here. He'll do better here. So she really suffered. She worked jobs that sacrificial.
Yeah. She demonstrated.
Yeah. But, you know, she had to put food on the table, couldn't live off of the rent. Had a lot of debts,
modeled motherly love. She taught you what a mother, what a father, what a good parent, what a good loving family member means. What does it mean? By her example as well as by her words, right? I mean,
definitely 100%. So it would hurt her when I would go astray. I wasn't a good student in school.
I don't believe that. Wait a minute now. Come on. You're too smart. You're too articulate. I've listened to your homilies. I mean, come on.
Let me give you something to talk about.
Okay.
You know, my grades in grade school, I don't know how I passed. You know, C's and D's were as common to me as A's and B's for the majority of my class. And you know, I had a hard time paying attention. It wasn't ADH, NHL, IBM,
yeah, right.
whatever those acronyms are. No, it was just, you know, it was hard to, I had a lot of energy inside of me. So it was hard to to focus, And
do you remember what you would think about in those classes that was distracting you? What was on your mind back then? Let's go to little George. What was little George thinking?
Daydreamer. I was the original. What was his name? Tattoo from Fantasy Island.
Tattoo.
I was a daydreamer. Fantasy Island. I was always living a movie scene. I was either in the ring or on the battlefield, being one of my G.I. Joe characters, just constantly, just hard to focus. I remember when I got in, of course, my mom said you have to go to college. So when I went into high school, I had to, I got into college prep courses, and now we have to start talking seriously about what's your focus, because what are you going to do when you go? What do you want to be when you grow up? Well, what I was telling people, if not at 6, at least by 8, is I wanted to be a professional wrestler.
Of course.
And I swore I was serious. And maybe we might go back to it, and forgive me for spending any time on it. It might seem silly, but I want you to know that I have literally achieved my goal. We'll get back to it. Anyway, So I went to college prep. I said I'll be a nuclear physicist. So the chemistry class, first test, I got 8 out of 100.
All right, at least you got 8.
Right. So of course I went to the teacher and I said, I need help. All right, George. So what did we do? For 2 weeks straight, I stayed after school and he tutored me. Next test, 0 out of 100. He looked at me and I dropped chemistry. I was no chance of being a nuclear physicist. I was thinking maybe a car salesman. I love sports. When you're in Philadelphia, I'm in the greater Pittsburgh area.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just say it. If you're, at least during my time, if you were an adolescent, a high schooler, young adult, I'll possibly even say it now, you go live in Philly. As soon as you get married and have kids, you drive the U-Haul to Western Pennsylvania and you live in the Pittsburgh area. Because let me tell you something, it's a great place to raise kids. And we haven't touched about Cannonsburg. So it's just a great place to raise kids and have a family, a lot safer, a lot more stable. Anyway, so car salesman, this and that. Sports. I love sports. So guess what? I want to be a sportscaster.
Makes sense.
And I find out that the CBS School of Broadcasting, has a school in downtown Philly, near the church of the Cathedral, St. George. So I went, we signed up. Every Saturday I would go take classes. I did demo tapes. This is George Livonas, WGLL, the soul sound of Philly.
I can hear it. I can hear it.
Peace, love, and Michael Jackson. And so I was, I was pumped. I was ready. While I was doing my high school classes, the grades weren't that great. Side note, if you ask me what creation symbol do you best relate with, you know what I would choose?
No.
An octopus.
You did that little talk on the octopus, and that one was tell everybody what you're talking about. That was a surprise to me.
Okay, well, is it a surprise if I tell you I like to eat, and I like to eat quality food of a wide variety? Like, don't tell me McDonald's, please. Like, some people go, chicken nuggets. No, please don't. Yeah. Don't waste my time.
That's not food.
Mussels. Escargot, not because they're rich in fat, just they're, Mediterranean food, okay? Lamb on a spit, goat, which really doesn't taste that bad. Anyway, so we have this delicacy of octopus. And that thing just floats around down below and does its thing. And it's pulled out of the water. And what happens to it? It is beaten beyond. It's beyond cognitive understanding. Beaten to a pulp to tenderize it. And then hung to dry. And then either presented in a grilled form, vinaigrette, et cetera, et cetera. It's presented to its master so deliciously. But how does it get that way? Because you cannot eat octopus unless you beat it past senselessness. So, I look at that as a spiritual symbol. And I had, growing up, growing up, I got a lot of spankings. My mom probably should have bought stock in yardsticks because, one swing of the yardstick, 36 inch, boom, it would break. I remember one of the last spankings I got, close to 16, I said to her, "You hit me with that and I'm going to leave this house, you crazy lady." She swung it. "Don't you dare stick your finger in front of your mom's face."
That's it, man. That's a death penalty right there.
Broke it on me. I walked down those 16 stairs. I walked out of that apartment. Boom. Slammed the door. I came back. Anyway, so I woke up Saturday morning ready for my FCC license test. And I said to Mom, "Mama, I'm not going to go." "T? What? I'm not going to go." She goes, "Why?" "I don't know. I had lost interest." I didn't go. So my jobs
You do know, can I pause for a second?
Please, stop me anytime.
You do know that obviously this was all part of God's plan and his calling. We know that. So we can understand that now. But you do know that had you gone, you'd have made one heck of a sports announcer. I mean, I could see that. Now, in a way, you've continued that tradition, you've continued those practices, and so that time you spent in that school was an important part of what you needed to know to ultimately fulfill your calling. So it was a righteous time. It was a righteous time.
You asked me if I worked at my dad's restaurant. I didn't because I was young.
Yeah, I was too young.
But boy, my jobs were in a Greek restaurant. And I remember being a dishwasher, going with my mom summers and, washing. She drove 15 miles one way to go to work, 5:30 in the morning by herself. She learned how to drive and she did that. I would go with her to Heian Family Restaurant, wash dishes and peel potatoes and whatnot. And then, I went and found a job, Greek restaurant right outside of the city. And for some reason, I don't know why, but the son-in-law of the family didn't like me. Thought I was a goody two-shoe, I guess. I was just doing my job.
Yeah.
And he just kept hollering at me. Now I come home. I mean, my mom would pick me up 11 o'clock at night, almost midnight. And I'm like, "Ma, I don't want to go back there. Olo Malone, he always screams and hollers at me." Be patient, son. Be patient. And it really wasn't long until one day I was mopping the restaurant as it had closed. And then I came into the kitchen. And all I remember is the next thing I know, I was grabbed by my white uniform, pushed up to the door of the refrigerator, and this knife that was really thick and big was on my throat. Right? Now, I'm sitting there with my eyes like this big.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there saying to me all sorts of bad Greek words and just calling me names and you name it. Well, thank God that nothing physically happened. But when I got into the car, I'm crying and screaming. I'm quitting. I'm never going back again. That's blah, 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 blah. You know what my mom did before we pulled out? She turned from the driver's seat, looked at me. She said, a Greek word I won't use, you're going to go back and you're going to work every day you're supposed to, so you know how hard it is to make $1. I said, no, it's going to kill me.
Yeah.
You're going to go and you're going to work. Man, she didn't raise no lazy person. Yeah. And I was called lazy a lot of times by her. And in school, teachers would say he doesn't pay attention. He's kind of lazy. But I'll tell you, I woke up from that experience, and can we take for a moment? Can we just every good turnpike has a rest stop, right? So
absolutely,
here's a rest stop. Here's a little rest stop I want to stop at. I was a little boy. Dad usually had the restaurant closed on Sunday, so that was his day of rest. At best, Dad would drive us to the L, and Mom and I would take the train, the elevated train, into the city, and then go to church.
Right.
And then she would use the church phone, and he would pick us up from the L. Right? Okay. When I was about 6-ish, somewhere between 6 and 8, Mom said it was time for me to go to Sunday school. I don't want to go to Sunday school. That was my answer, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And there we are at St. George Cathedral. Another reason why I smile and thank God. And I mean, that experience, the people there, and of blessed memory, Father Dimitrios S. Katerlis, of blessed memory. Was like a dad to me. So she convinces Presbytera to take me out of the pew by the hand and follow the kids down the aisle of this, cathedral and behind the door to go to Sunday school. And I'm crying. When we got out of my mom's eyesight, I stopped. She turns, Presbytera looks at me, she goes, Tia, he's your Georgi. What is it, Georgie? And I kick her in the shins.
What?
I kick her in the shins.
Uh-oh.
And I run from her and run crying into the altar. The priest, at a time where the chanters were chanting, turns and looks at me and says, Yorgaiki, Georgie, what's wrong? I want to be an altar boy. So he told the boys, go get him, dress him. So they dressed me. And I came into the altar, wiping my eyes. They told me where to stand. And then it was time to go out. And they gave me the lantern. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm an altar boy, And the door opens, the archangel door opens, and I go waddling out with the rest of the kids, and I take my place. I was told, my mom went, he left the pew. I got into the altar, ran, they said, down the aisle, through the door that I went, to the side of the altar door near the dressing room.
Right.
Started pounding the door. I started crying. The Baba pauses the service, leaves in front of the altar table, looks at a distance. Kyria Marika, Mrs. Marika, what's wrong? She's like this. Tell him to go to Sunday school. He said, Ashton, leave him. He's okay. Bill, I confess to you, I never went a day to Sunday school.
Really?
I was an altar boy from that time until now.
Yeah.
58, almost 59-year-old altar boy.
Can I ask a question? So,
Yeah.
what was it that happened to you, if you can recall, and you may not, in that moment that caused you to know that the left path to Sunday school was not the one you needed to take, but the right path to the altar was the one that you needed to be
waste
on?
your breath. There's no answer. Well, I logically thought, that's not. This isn't a choice between Doritos and Philly pretzels, which is easier.
Yeah.
This was simply out of my league, man. It was just whatever God wanted.
Yeah.
It was whatever God allowed. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. I don't know how I have certain gifts. I don't know why my wife accepted, to marry me when a number of family members were telling her he's not priestly material.
Nah, come on.
He's not priestly material. When I was at Hellenic College, you need to be mature and read the fathers and whatnot. And I was like, I wasn't that mold. I don't know why God gave us 7 kids. I don't know why I have 9 grandchildren. I don't know why and how he allowed me to come as a family to Cannonsburg, and how these people for now 32 years have accepted us in their hearts and minds, and even under this situation. Now, full-term disability and long-term disability, and they could have easily just said, we appreciate what he did for us, building a new church, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, but really, we need to take care of ourselves and whatnot. Nope.
Yeah, but that's not, I'm sorry, I will get to that, but that isn't the value system, the core values you created in that community. So it should be it's no surprise to me as an outsider, but I'm sure it's no surprise to you as one who was intimately involved in creating that value system at that blessed church, that would be the reaction. But what I'm sensing from this incredible story, because there's one could listen to this story and think of it as a story of delinquency, not a good student, disruptive, running away from Sunday school, not ever going to Sunday school. But there is a clarity of the path that the Lord put you on in every step of the way here, that now looking back on it, it makes perfect sense, even though at the time I'm sure your mom was like, oh no, this is crazy. But there's a moment in time, and I know this in your heart, there's a moment in time when there was a brief moment of clarity to you that said, where I may not feel I'm worthy, I really need to be a priest. What was that? Where did it happen? Tell us about that.
Okay. So it's probably, I'm in 10th grade, summer of 10th grade. I'm in the altar. I was a captain, involved very much. And I remember our Papa lifted up the gifts, thine own of thy own, thus I and so on. And I'm looking, and just before we're supposed to kneel, all of a sudden my eyes just flooded with tears.
Wow.
And I didn't kneel. I just stood there. My dearest best friend at the time, in one of the arteries of my life, turned to me and said, are you thinking about your dad? Because obviously it was some years now after my dad. I said, no, but everything in front of me is all shiny and gold, and it's like this light. Liturgy ended, coffee hour, got in the car. I think I had my license permit. I'm driving this Isuzu. So we're really close. Me, Mom, and of course 2 beautiful Theas in the back seat. Right. And we're driving on Interstate I-95 so we can drop them off at their homes. And I was driving, and I remember saying, Mama, I think, and in Greek, I think I want to become a priest. My mom was like, what? The woman said, Tibis? What did you say?
Yeah.
And I said, papas. I think I want to become a priest. So nothing really happened. No major conversations.
What was her reaction? Do you remember at that moment? I mean, what would it?
Yeah. Oh boy, how do I translate the awe and wonder? Awe and
Yeah.
awe and wonder, right? So she, nothing else happened much. I went to bed. I woke up in the morning the next day, and I greeted her. Kalimera, Mama. I'm going to be a priest.
Oh,
the words
it was
that came
done.
out of my mouth. That's what I said to her.
Yeah.
So she says, well, let's call our father and let's talk to him and see. There's a school in Boston, and I don't know, maybe you'll go to school here in Philly, and then later go up there. We'll talk. So when I called, our papa, Father Dimitrios, he said to me, quote, forget Temple, forget Penn, forget the local schools. You're going to go straight to Hellenic College.
Oh, he had it made up, huh?
So, okay. And so my mom and I visited the school, and let's just take a small moment. Here's a woman who lost her husband, who really felt alone.
Right.
She widowed young. She married my father when she was 33 years old. And then that was in 61, and he died in 74. So do the math,
Yeah.
She was young. I remember one time, probably 13-ish, 14, there was a Greek gentleman who kind of had the eyes for my mom. And at a meeting that they had to talk about the restaurant, I remember getting in the car and I said to her, Mom, if you ever marry, I'll kill you. I'll never talk to you. I'll hate you for as long as you live. And she said that to me later on. She says, you told me I couldn't even marry, date, or anything. And in a way, I don't think she said that begrudgingly.
Yeah.
But, when it came time, I graduated high school in 1980. I left and went to Boston. Okay, I came home Thanksgiving, Christmas. But this woman then was by herself, doing her work routine, and living her life and waiting for me to come home. And we would call and talk, a couple times during the week, etc. And she kept saying, better not be playing up there. You better not be wasting time and money, because school loans. We didn't have the money. We had to beg. Sometimes churches are such that they're very philanthropic when it comes time to offer financial aid to their young men who want to study for the priesthood, and sometimes, So
that's something we need to do a lot better job of. No question about it, even to this day.
We were on the side, right? So she owns a building. What does she need money for?
Right.
But we were so much in debt because Dad, God bless him, did the best he could. So, there were a couple young men connected. One specifically to Philly through his grandparents. Another one she met up there. And I found out that once in a while, my mom would send them thank you cards and a $20 bill to keep an eye on them.
Wow. Yeah, man.
I didn't find that out till when I got into school of theology. So initially I was offended, but I can see why she did it.
You knew what her heart was all about in that movement. In that moment.
Definitely. Definitely. My grades were not great at Hellenic College. And I never flunked, but boy, they were like on the You know how when you have a Greek coffee, and the first this much of the Greek coffee, man, it's good. Then all of a sudden,
good.
you get to that one sip,
Right.
where it's not 100% Mississippi
Grounds.
mud,
Yeah.
not 100%, but you know things have changed. That was my grade line. that was me the whole time.
All right, I'm gonna have a sip of coffee in your honor here. Okay, it's all right. It's good. It came out. It came out okay. I know how this story progresses, and it actually came out okay. You know.
So I remember meeting. My mom kept saying to me, "You didn't go up there to become a papa. You going up there to find a girlfriend."
No,
like,
she really said that?
Yeah, and I said, "What does that mean?" You know, and I don't know. I guess I was talking to her about, I met this girl. I met this girl. I met this girl.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know, and
so that was her way of testing you to make sure you were still serious about what the objective was, right?
She went to Father Calivas.
Oh.
And she looked him straight in the eye, dean of the school. Satongano me papa? Are we going to make him a priest? And Father Calivas said, Mrs. Livonas, we'll make him a priest.
So she was looking for a commitment, right? She wanted the school as invested in it as she was.
Yeah, I mean, she, obviously financial, debts created to get there. She's waiting, by herself until I would come home. And, the more you live away from home when you're a young adult, the more you become independent. So every time I kept coming home, I wasn't that, cuddly little boy anymore. In a sense, like what am I doing here in this small apartment? And I have my friends, neighborhood friends, not as much anymore. Some of them sadly had, life issues. The Greek community was always still there, but they were friends on Sunday and good friends. But my life was Boston. Everything, I couldn't wait to go back to school. My classmates, my schoolmates. And by the way, when I went up there in freshman year, the closest people I was connected with, school theology students and seniors of Hellenic College, more than my own classmates. I don't know why.
Why is that? Why is that?
Well, I think the simple reason would be because I grew up around older people.
Right.
I didn't have brothers, sisters. Friends were, not like my kids have friends. So I made, your father Thomas the Ferris's Christolides, George Christolides' blessed memory, Father Nick Anktel, Father Nick Graff. They're all, priests now. But my point is, all those guys, they were the people that I hung around with. Father Anthony Stratus, my big brother, Charlie Anthony, who's now right outside of Mount Athos for decades doing wonderful ministry at Uranopolis, or not Uranopolis, Ormelia, excuse me, medical ministry in Ormelia. They were the people I hung around with. But by the time, it didn't take long, I guess, for God to bring me at peace by finding wonderful young lady. Wonderful.
An angel. An angel.
In human form.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, I don't like amusement park rides at all. Any of them, except bumper cars.
Wait. There's got to be a story there, I'm sure, but yeah.
Well, I'm afraid. I grew up as a little Greek boy. So the word "me," don't, was literally the creed I grew up with. Don't touch this. Yeah. Don't eat that. Don't go there. Right. Don't do this. Right. So I was afraid of everything. Bees, bugs, you name it,
So much for that tough wrestler guy. I mean, it didn't take much to get you kind of
in typical professional wrestler fashion. Like the Hulk, you had a Hulkster, right? You had a beam, until finally, you start juicing up, and then you don't feel it, right? So,
right.
This woman, Dianthe Paporis, who was a transfer student from Akron, who came up with her own story and baggage to Hellenic College. I remember walking out of the cafeteria, and I walked out of the cafeteria, I walked up to the steps, and there's the driveway going in and out, the main artery of the school. And I don't know why, but my head immediately turned, and here comes this green Buick coming up with Ohio plates. And I just happened to look at the driver, and something happened inside of me. I'm not exaggerating. Something happened inside of me, changed I just started walking now behind the car to follow where it was going. When she got out of the car, I said, "Hi, my name is George Livonas. I'm a..."
if this were today, they'd accuse you of stalking, right? I mean, this was like, I know this is a godly inspired relationship, but that could be a little creepy in the wrong circles,
Yeah.
Especially for a kid from Philly.
Take it easy. Offered to carry her bags, introduce myself. I knew I was going to marry that woman.
Wow.
Don't ask me. I knew it.
Wow.
I knew it. She came bow and all for me.
There's a pattern that I'm seeing in this, that there are a series of thunderbolt moments in your life that completely changed the trajectory of your life. Obviously, your father's passing was a thunderbolt moment. Obviously, seeing that glitter, that gold, that sign in the altar was a thunderbolt moment. Seeing your relationship the first time you saw Dianthe, that was another thunderbolt moment. And this is kind of a nice segue in some respects, because when I think of you, you have this little schizophrenic thing in my head. I think of you as a model clergyman, an absolutely model clergyman, the kind of clergyman that I would send young clergymen to and said, just follow this guy, do whatever he does, talk the way he talks, and you'll do fine. But there's a second schizophrenic side of you that I always think of when I think of you, and that is as a model family person. Model husband, father, grandfather, godfather. I mean, I can go on and on, but what I see in you, my thunderbolt moments when I see you, is the absolute rapture and glory you have when you are serving as a priest. And I see that in a different way, but a similar type of raptural joy when I see the pictures of you and your family, or I see you interacting. So tell us about your family.
My family. Well, gift of God. Gift of God. People say, you have 7 kids. Must be because you grew up an only child. If anyone really knows me, I don't plan anything. I don't plan homilies. I don't plan sometimes even church calendars. I definitely don't plan the finances. I definitely don't plan the finances of the home. But I just don't shoot from the hip. I just go with there's a divine flow.
Right.
And if I could find human words to describe that energy, it would be follow me. Follow me.
Good, powerful words.
Follow me. Sometimes it's trust me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I don't think it's love me. Follow me.
No, it is. Let me interrupt. It is, but it's not in the egotistical sense of love me. It's in the I'm invested in loving you with every part of my heart and soul, and that always evokes a responsive love.
We dated. We were, it's a small campus, right? So everybody knows when you blow your nose. Everybody knows your business. And everybody is a psychologist. Everybody's a counselor.
Yeah.
Everybody's
fortune teller, soothsayer. Yeah. They got it all, right?
And everybody feels that they can stick their finger in the pulse of your life and tell you what to do because they know better, including the administration and its clergy and your classmates and friends and whatnot. So we were the couple of the campus. Ooh. They looked at George and Deonthi and they were like, wow, what is the variety? They match. But
you're like homecoming, like homecoming king and queen. It's like they got the crowns on you already.
And I didn't, I can't say my grades went from 0 to 60, but there was a little bit more of a peace inside of me for some reason, for sure. But without going into too many details and throwing anyone under the bus, there was that darkness of some people close to her saying, he's not right for you. He's not right for you. Both on campus and within her inner circle.
Okay.
And finally, one day, out of the clear blue sky, she breaks up with me.
What? You remember? I'm sure you remember when it was.
Let me tell you what happened after I left her presence. I went into my room up at Halki Village and practically destroyed it. I'm talking about, I took the chair to the desk. I mean, I ripped this stuffed heart into pieces. It was a horror movie, and yet it was also a scene from a TV wrestling moment, when your best friend, your tag team partner, betrays you on national TV. Yeah. I went ape. You know what the next word is.
Right.
My world collapsed. And let me just throw you a little, since no one else is listening, but just you and me.
Just you and me. It's just you and me talking.
It's just you and me. There was a picture she had. It was her high school graduation picture, I think it was.
Uh-huh. She
had a hairstyle and she had that side pose. Sweet Jesus. When I say beauty, ancient beauty, divine beauty, there's not a piece of marble that could hold that beauty. So I kept periodically saying to her, Deonthi, I love that hairstyle on that picture. Why don't you cut your hair like that? No. I think she left her hair long or whatever the case may be. You want to know something, Bill? When we broke up, you know what her girlfriends did on campus? Convinced her to get a haircut.
What?
You know what kind of hairstyle she came up with?
No, don't tell me.
Thank God no one else is listening. Thank God.
She did.
She hears this. I'm dead because I've just gone live to Bill Marianis alone and have told
the world. Man. Yeah. She's going to pull out her kutala, her wooden spoon, and she's going to revisit a beat like your mama gave you.
This is a small campus, Bill. If I burped at the end of Halki Village, you heard it on the other side of the school, on the other side of Polymonakos, on Goddard Ave as it was passing around the corner. So you can't do anything on this campus. You can't hide. You can't run. You can't hide. You can't do nothing. We were sometimes in the same class together. Some of her credits didn't transfer over, so I was a year ahead of her. I graduated at Helena College 84. She was 85. We were in classes together, and I had to sit and look at a woman that I knew. She was like of God for me. I'll tell you another secret. Don't tell anyone.
I'm not. Hey, man, you and me, Bubba.
At night.
You know, attorney-client privilege. Here it is.
At night, she and I would take walks around the campus, and we'd sit behind the gym, relax, everybody, nothing happened.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Anyway, so
it's a PG program, okay? We just got to keep it at that level.
I was a Greek boy. You figure it out. Anyway.
There you go.
So anyway, we sit on steps, and we spend a lot of time looking up into a dark sky. There's no better campus in the world.
Yeah, you're out there in nature.
If you want to do a program about Hellenic College and Holy Cross, I'd be happy if God gives me the strength to talk to you about what diamond we have.
Let's
and
do
all
that.
the boo-boos. Not judging anyone. Anyone. But just all the boo-boos we are making, have made, not knowing what gift God gave us.
Right.
So anyway, we're looking up in the sky. And if it's not every night, and don't be offended, it sounds like I'm dreaming. It was practically every night. We see a shooting star. Like we even knew
really?
God was talking. We even knew that God had stamped this relationship. And now I got to watch that little blessed woman walk around the campus with that hairstyle that, that I thought,
style. Yeah.
And we wouldn't talk, we wouldn't this, we wouldn't that. My end of my junior year was horrible. God softened my heart through good sacred relationships with good people that surrounded me at the time. And there was a lot of healing. And from that, tremendous friendships took place that have lasted to this day, that if you open my skin, you'll find their names written somewhere.
Yeah. You got their blood in their veins. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that was tough. It was tough. And my mom saw me like crash big time. And then, of course, the supportive Greek aunts of Greater Philadelphia, whom I love, I forgive.
That sounds like a TV show. We should do that TV show, The Theas of Philadelphia, the Ants of Philadelphia.
They, because Toriorgaiki, our Georgie, was wounded.
Little Georgie.
Oh, man. I had to listen to them whenever I came home. She was no good for me. She was 2 years old. She was, basically making Eve look like the Virgin Mary, holy and pure. and my wife, and my now wife, she was bad. And the inside of me was like, shut up. That's not true, So it was tough. When we got into, if this is too long or too detailed, I'm sorry. Feel free to kick me off and get more personal. I'm just trying to tell you that
life is what matters. These memories of life are what create not only your history, but our shared history, and they make a difference. They matter. So no, life is never too long.
She went one way, I went the other, still same campus. And then there was this like one day, it was, her relationships didn't work out. Mine turned into, with my wife, they became, lifelong friends. So March 25th of 1983.
You gotta do the math, huh?
I think it was. Look now. These legal narcotics that I'm on, painkillers and other medications, do a job on the mind. So anyway, I'm surprised that you can remember dates and times at all. I don't have the same excuse that you legitimately have, and I can't remember any of this stuff. So God bless you for what you're doing. I asked her as a friend, can I take you to our favorite restaurant, Daily Catch, North End of Boston, for dinner? And she said yes. I drive her car. It's pouring rain. And if you know anything about the North End of Boston, a mouse couldn't find a parking spot.
Yeah, I was going to say Yeah, you can't shoehorn anything up there.
Right in front of the restaurant, there was a spot. Parked the car, went in, we ate. After the meal, we got in the car. We knew. The rest is history. So I know you'll talk to her later. She probably has some stories that she might want to throw in there about
yeah, there's got to be a rebuttal time, Father. We always, whenever I know this from having counseled couples, right? I mean, there's always got to be a rebuttal. There's another side of the story that we don't always hear. So,
well, I'll leave things there for her. But anyway, we married. Oh, I gotta throw this funny one out. She might not remember it. We got back together. We got engaged. I brought her back to Philly. We went to church, coffee hour. The he and women said, they're looking, and my mom is like, calling the women by first name. It's just George and Deonti, they're engaged. Shorty Saime. Is she from Hughes? Because St. George was like 99.6%.
Yeah, man, it's a culture.
And Deonti says, no. My mom said no. He married. He got engaged to a Xen, to a foreigner.
Somebody, a foreigner, only in Greece can you be considered a foreigner, even if you're Greek, but not from the right village. You're not from the family's
Where
village.
Are you from? Right? Well, my mother's from Patras. My dad's from Macedonia.
Oh, it's too bad.
Listen, because no one's listening. When my wife, my fiance, wasn't around, one of these women, whose daughter I had an eye for in high school, looked at me and said, we were holding so-and-so for you, and I said, I liked your daughter. I wanted to go to prom. Oh, you were too small, too young. You were too young. You had to, we wanted you to finish college and then come home. And then, well, I'm glad everyone planned my life except
just didn't tell you.
Didn't tell me.
Yeah.
But hey, I was shot in the heart. Shot in the heart. So we married. Now, you want to hear a funny story?
No, I don't want to hear any more funny stories. Tell me, brother.
Right. Tell me. My last 2 years of academics at Hellenic at Holy Cross were the best academic years of my life.
Why am I not surprised?
Married. I was a house cleaner. I had a side job. I was, but I had great grades. And you know what happened to me in my final year? I got on the dean's list.
There you go.
And we had our first baby. My wife was pregnant, and I finished the year on the dean's list.
There, late bloomer, but I'll tell you what, man, you hit your stride, you're running full speed.
Yeah,
you're running full speed. And so another thunderbolt moment as your soul mate, your partner for life, together comes and brings you, and she elevates you in so many ways, but in one way also to actually inspire you to really find your rhythm in even your theological education. That's a gift. That's a gift, brother. That is a gift.
I was ordained a deacon I was on campus last 6 months. I was a deacon to then Bishop Methodius, Metropolitan Methodius. And boy, did I have a sergeant as a deacon. God bless. I mean, as a bishop teaching me, and I learned a lot in those 6 months with him. God bless him. And, so then we went to Maryville, Indiana with a little baby. Oh, that was funny. It was hard enough for my mom to swallow that I went to Boston, but he'll finish college. He'll go to school theology. Then he'll come home. We'll find him a girl from from our Heian village, and then he'll get married and whatnot. So, and of course, always I did whatever I wanted. So I went to Hellenic College. I grew further away from Philly. My heart found this woman. I get engaged. to a woman a little bit older than me. Smart move.
Yeah.
But one of the things I told Dianfi, why I was totally fine with marrying a woman 2 years older than me. You're supposed to say, what? What did you tell her?
Okay, I'm waiting for you because you got me hanging here. I'm on the edge of a cliff waiting for you to drop the word. And
I got to do your job too.
Listen, come on. You got to do it both, okay? You're used to doing multiple jobs.
Multiple personality. So
yeah, exactly.
I said, you know why? Because I'm sick and tired of seeing all these guys die and leave their wives behind. And they're all waddling, with his Social Security check and whatnot. And these poor guys worked in restaurants and whatnot. I married someone older. Not that I wanted her to die, but I wanted a fighting chance of us being together a lot longer.
Right.
Huh?
Well,
see how that worked out. Anyway.
Well, we don't know. That final chapter has not yet been written, my brother. So let's not. We ain't put the postscript on this one yet. But but it is one of those. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Moment. I get it.
Amen. So so my mom thought, okay, all right. I didn't want him to get married before he finished school. I didn't want him to marry someone older and not someone from our background. All right. He's having a baby before he graduated. He got ordained a deacon. Okay. So at least when he finishes school, because he has one mother, he'll come back to the Philly area. Back to the Philly area, talk to Metropolitan Silas, whom we were decently close with, etc. And what did I say to her? Mama, I got my assignment. Phone call. Bravo, pedimo. Where, and I said, I'm going to Maryville, Indiana.
Stab in the heart, right? I mean, and by the way, nobody knows Maryville, Indiana back then, right? I mean, that was. So, what did she say? What was her reaction?
Who?
Where?
And this is on the phone, right? Because I'm smart. I know how to fight this fight.
So, you ain't doing this one in person because
I said Maryville, Indiana, and so I'll do it all in English. Where's Indiana? I said, well, I'm up in Massachusetts. Let's go from Pennsylvania. All the way at the end, you go to Ohio. All the way at the end, you go into next Indiana. All the way at the end, practically on the border near Chicago. Silence. That's how. She starts crying. Yeah. I raised you. I stayed. Listen, I'm telling you, God, my wife, my kids, my mother. That's how it goes, okay? Yeah, so I'm not making fun of my mom. She's screaming, she's crying. She's screaming, she's crying. You don't have any respect for my suffering. You don't have any respect for your mother. I said, Mom, what are you talking about? You should be happy. Happy. Yeah, you're going to the devil's mother in the distance where you're going. It should be about the manapas, So I'm, and, I couldn't figure out, you weren't that happy with who I married. You weren't happy that I got married. Now you weren't happy that I named my child after a hymnographer and saint of the church. She said, well, who was a whore? I said, no, Cassini wasn't a whore, And I said, she said, why did you name your daughter Cassini? I said, well, I was a psalti at school. My wife was one of the psalti says female first chanter of the school. I mean, God gave us a daughter. We honored singing Cassini. You didn't even honor you didn't even honor your mother.
Yeah.
Listen, I told you, my mom's great. I got nothing negative to say about my mom. But these things, they have real consequences and impacts. Yeah. Well, she called Father Catherine. He says, this is how good. She went to Metropolitan Silas.
Uh-oh.
And you think for sure, I've talked to bishops. I've talked to metropolitans and patriarchs. I've told them, I'm not embarrassed to say it, with much love. I said, you only got one job. They said, what's that? Love your priests.
Yep.
And their
You got to have their
families.
backs.
Love their priests and love their families. But everything else doesn't matter.
Right.
You send them into battle. You have to have their backs.
Amen.
I don't care how they function. You have to be their God on earth. And we will give you everything you need to do what you need to do. So I thought that of blessed memory, Metropolitan Silas would have my back. And he basically said, paraphrased, Tila Togan. What should I do with him? He does whatever he wants.
All right.
That's what you tell a grieving, widowed woman that I chose? Like, I was doing what I was supposed to do, right?
Right.
Be obedient.
Practicing obedience.
I got a phone call. I picked up the phone. There's no caller ID, right?
Yeah,
Back in 1987. Hello? Is this Deacon George Livonas? Yes. This is Father Bill Mitzos. Not me. Did I say it right? Father Bill Mitzos. Father Mitzos, of blessed memory. If I have his first name wrong, forgive me. From Cincinnati, Ohio. Hi, Father. How are you? And I thanked him for calling. He called to tell me that I was assigned to his church in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, okay, I was excited. I didn't go shopping. The Archbishop, Iakovos, blessed memory, he makes the first assignment. So that's where we're going. Get off the phone. We're going to Cincinnati, Ohio. This is even before I even had a chance to talk to my mom. A couple days later, I get a phone call at my apartment. Pick the phone. Father George? I say, yes, this is Father Evagoras Constantinides of blessed memory. Hi, Father, your blessings. He says, I'm calling to tell you that you are assigned as my assistant in Maryville, Indiana. Father, are you sure you have the right person? Yes. Why, yes, he says. I said, but I got a phone call from Father Mitzos that I was assigned to Cincinnati, Ohio. He says, oh, yeah, I know. I took care of that. I talked to the Archbishop. You're coming to me. Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we talked a little bit. He says, I'll give you a call back. We'll talk about housing, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I told the auntie that we were going to Maryville, Indiana. That's when I talked to my mom. I got a phone call, not even 24 hours later. Picked the phone. It wasn't a very happy Father Mitzos.
Oh.
Who thought that I went behind his back. Now, if you talk to some people who know, he was a sweet man.
Yeah.
And yet the only thing he had in his mind is that I worked behind his back and finagled my way out of his parish to Father Vigoras's. And I'm like, Father, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got on the bad list there. Anyway, we went to
but anybody who knew Father Ev, and he was the one that married me. Anyone that knew Father Ev knew, when he made up his mind and it was going to happen, as the Greeks say, egine, it was done.
Done.
Yeah.
Done. You thought Macarius was the head of Cyprus? Evagoras was.
Right.
Anyway, we went to Maryville, Indiana. It's always a struggle, your first assignment. Back then, it wasn't like it is today, a little softer landing for most of us guys. But back then, and Father Ev was something else. His family knows this. I'm close to his son. I'm close to his grandson. So I, with no fear, tell you that I should have gone to boot camp because it would have been easier. Because Father Ev, I remember walking into the office at 9:05, and he's in the library. I walk in. I say, "Good morning, Father." He says, "Good afternoon." And I pause. I say, "Good morning, Father." And he says, "Well, good afternoon." I look at the clock, 9:05. I understand. He goes, "What time is it?" I said, "It's 9:05. He says, "I've been here since 7:00 in the morning."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Well, you're semi-retired. I didn't sleep last night." Because he was crying all through the night. I thought I was getting reprimanded because I was there 5 minutes late. Like he wanted me to be like him.
Yeah.
It took more than a decade to realize that I had a very, very, very good teacher.
Yeah.
Regardless that our personalities were night and day, I had a very good teacher. And God rest his soul, him and President Mary.
Yeah.
And they produced a beautiful family.
Absolutely.
And from, Bishop Maximus married Deonthi and I in 1985. He knew my wife. It was one of his kids. If you knew Maximus of blessed memory, he always said, that's my guy. That's my guy. That's my, And so when he married us, he said, "You're now one of ours. And I'm going to, when you get ordained, I'm going to bring you to Pittsburgh." And so 87 to 88, 1 year, 14 months with I was ordained to the priesthood, by the way, by Bishop Iakovos, also of blessed memory. But I didn't fit in Chicago. I made some nice friends, but I wasn't I didn't fit with the Chicago guys. I just wasn't they had a network. I just wasn't me. Chicago wasn't me. So His then Grace brought us to Wheeling, West Virginia. And then we came with my wife pregnant with our second child, and small parish, first time on my own. And in the 9th month, I get a phone call. Not Deonthi's 9th month, my 9th month of ministry.
Yeah.
No caller ID. Picked up the phone. "Hello, Father George." "Oh, hi, Your Grace." Tikanete, He's a Hyoti, I'm a Hyoti.
Okay.
So we had a nice relationship. He says, "Father George, I want you to come to Cannonsburg and take over the parish." I said, "Cannonsburg, where?" It's Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. Now that happened to be almost halfway point between Wheeling and Pittsburgh, interesting enough, on Interstate 79 North. And I'm like, you just assigned me here. I've been here 9 months. Where am I going to go? So I blew him off, hung up the phone. We had a nice, that was it. This is March of 1989. Calls again in the same month. "Father George, hi, Your Grace. I really want you to consider." And I'm talking to him in Greek. "Are you in your right mind?" I mean, I'm not saying Wheeling was paradise. I'm not saying Wheeling was hell. But, I had this philotimo.
Right.
This parish pays $5,000, moves me from Indiana to Wheeling.
You old.
Leave? Yeah, right? Yeah, right. So, blew off again. Third phone call.
Uh-oh. That's it.
Father George. "Yes, Your Grace. Have you given any thought?" Still March. "They're going to kill me if I accept this. And they're going to kill you too. Please, Your Grace." Isn't it? Phone rang.
Oh, really?
Picked up the phone. "Father George. Your Grace, hold on, please." Deonthi. It's Bishop Maximus. I have to say yes.
I've run out of excuses.
I said no to him 3 times. And she looked at me, she goes, I said, next thing I said, Your Grace, when do you want me to come up? He said, good. So I went up, I met the people. They had a small god, right kind of god is their priest, Father Michael Varvarelis, tremendous man of God. They had just bought the property to build a new church in the future, and for ecclesiastical, proper pastoral reasons, he all of a sudden accepted an assignment to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and he was going to go, and they needed to find a replacement, and they chose me for whatever reason. It took me 15 years to recover a decent name in Wheeling. They were hurt. They thought I left because of the money. I had a bad name with them. They weren't bad people, but they just could not get it through their head that I could not fight to stay in Wheeling.
Yeah.
I came to Canonsburg. Rest is history. Now, interesting to note, I told you that we were pregnant. My wife gave birth in Wheeling to our second child. My wife chose to home birth. Cassiani was a birthing center in Beverly. There's not enough time for those stories.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Our mommy, our midwife, was from a town called Houston, PA, right outside of Canonsburg. Literally, practically on the border. So the handwriting, it was all over the wall.
Yeah.
I'm going to Canonsburg. And we went to Canonsburg and had 5 more kids. When we went to All Saints in Canonsburg, in the old church, the old community, and here I am, 89. It's just before I was 24, turning 25. They just looked at me and said, "You're our new priest." This young guy, young kid. And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you going to have 6 kids?" They looked at me like that. I said, "Why?" So, because the priest before you had 6 kids. So I just had my second child. I don't know if I'll have 6 kids. 7. 5 were born in Canada.
Oh, what a blessed journey. What a blessed journey. Although it seemed circuitous at the time, I think you can look back now and reflect on it prayerfully in a knowledge that there was a plan. There was a plan every step of the way. And
all the kids were born at home. Excuse me. All the kids were born at home. They were all homeschooled, practically. Primarily. God definitely had a plan, and I was scared. I never showed it, I don't think, about raising kids. And I had 2 major fears in my life, personal ones that I didn't let out until much later in life, not that long ago. One was, if I became a father to a son, would I be able to raise him? Because I was raised by my mom.
Yeah,
so I was raised by my mom. So Cassini was first. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I interrupted you. That was a poignant part of your history that obviously would play in your mind.
Yeah. So when Micah was born, and he got, of course, there were other kids every 2 years. Girl, 2 years later, boy. Cassiani, Micah, Efstolia, Serafim, Mariam, Vikendios, 2 years apart, except for Cassie, all born at home. 6 years later, after 2 miscarriages, girl. So perfect line. But when Micah became 12, I was scared. And I remember telling Bianfi, I don't know if I can do this. It wasn't the number of kids at the time. It was just like, I didn't have a father. I mean, respectfully said, don't be offended. I didn't have a father really growing up anyway. Greek restaurant.
Right.
He was much older than me. He was 59 when he died in 74, and I was just about to turn 12.
Right.
So that's a chunk of, it was over 40 years difference, 47 years difference in age. right? So, but God gave me the grace to, with my wife, to be real with the kids. I told you it was two major fears. You know what the second one was?
I understand the first one. That made perfect sense. I mean, what was number two?
Would I live longer than my father? So a year ago, May 21st, when I was rushed to the hospital and couldn't understand why I was being rushed to the hospital, totally cognitive, didn't feel like something bad was happening, other than I had this pain in the side and this little cough and a little hard to breathe, but you know, never would have expected in 24 hours to be told that I had an incurable terminal disease called mesothelioma. And I was like, so what can we do? He said, nothing. Nothing? How long do I have? And my doctor is crying like a baby because he's one of my best friends. And he's in the hospital room with me. My wife wasn't allowed to come, COVID, right? All by myself. And, they extracted 7 pounds of liquid from around my left lung in the hospital. I did that all by myself. God was with me to have the courage.
Well, of course. Right.
Right. But, I said, there's nothing we can do. I said, how long? A couple months, maybe a year. So, okay. Well, let's just do what we need to do. And it kind of dawned on me. I'm 57, about to turn 58. I'm not going to make it to 59. Well, this is May what? What's today's date?
The 7th.
So on the 21st, it will be 1 year. Then I'm here. And early April, they told me I'm more than terminal. It's just some weeks. Because the tumor, even though we had some success with chemo, and they started immunotherapy, and that it wasn't working and making me sicker and blah, blah. The tumor is now larger than it was before, has circled the bottom of my left lung. Of course, it's on my diaphragm. It's working its way up toward the heart. So that's why I'm on hospice right now. I know we jumped, but
no, I'm following you wherever you want to go.
That was my, will I make it past 59? I don't know if I'll make it to 59.
What's that date, Father?
September 16. I turned 59. And then it'll have to be a whole nother year. But it doesn't mean anything. Big deal. We'll talk about that later. I think the key element here about parenting, I want you to take the bank account and all the assets of Rockefeller, Mellon, of Bezos and Gates and Trump, count it all up. And I would blow my nose to how cheap that is compared to the wealth that I have experienced being the husband of the Livonas and the father of 7 unbelievable divine gifts who I am totally unworthy to be called their papa, who know Christ far better than me, who are far better an example than I could ever be. Funnier, pure, faithful, stronger, mature than I could ever be. I have God to thank for that. Forgive me. I have my wife to thank for that. I have Metropolitan Maximus to thank for that, who in many ways was a father to me in my priesthood in his diocese metropolis. And I have the parish of All Saints to thank for that, by being patient and allowing me to be here as a family for 32 years this year. So the kids did not have to experience the pains, the sorrows, the sufferings of constantly moving, or parishes bitching and griping,
Right.
justifiably so or not, about their priest or their priest family or whatnot. I will forever be indebted that when I was, as a family, brought to Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, I was established in the center of the universe and made it as sacred as Jerusalem. And we did it together. As a
You shall be
family of
witnesses
blood.
to me in Jerusalem and all of Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. You truly did make Canonsburg your Jerusalem, but you've reached the ends of the earth too. And I think that's important for you to just think about for a second or two, because as you reflect on the incredible impact you've had on the faithful of your parish, who I know because I've been there and I've seen that and I've been with them and I listen to them talk about you and I've seen what they say about you. But I think you also need to understand that you didn't stop in your Jerusalem and you didn't stop in Judea and Samaria. And that's really kind of the segue here, in the sense that when you got that diagnosis a year or so ago, the trajectory of your life, another thunderbolt came in and the trajectory of your life changed. And I think, as I've mentioned to you when we were setting this up, that I think your stewardship calling changed. I think that you went from just being an incredible parish priest to now having to share something very powerful for all of us here. And that's what I want to make sure you get a chance to do. What do you want to share about what this diagnosis has caused? Is
there a commercial at all in this program?
If you need a break, we take it. And if you want to take it now, we take it now. I'd
appreciate it.
You got it. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a pause. And when we come back,
maybe this is a good time to bring my wife in.
Yeah, I would love to talk to Presbytera Diante. I have a few questions to ask her. I want to get the other side of the story and give you a chance to get your fluids all recalibrated here. How about that?